Hey, Brian, here we go. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for the invite. Thanks for joining me this evening. I'm going to take you on a bit of a ride here. Basically, it's the process that I use, or the thinking process that I use in constructing a painting. So this is intuitive for me now, but I thought I would share, depending on your level of experience. You may not have been exposed to this approach or whatever. So I thought I'd walk you through what I'm doing here. We've talked about questions, and I really like having questions, but with the time constraint, as much as possible, unless it's something really critical about what I'm talking about right now, we're going to delay them to the end of the evening, and we'll have a little chat at that point too. So I don't know how long this is going to take. We'll try to do it less than the 90 minutes, but we will see what happens here. So here we go. I'm going to switch over to PowerPoint and take you for a little ride. Okay, everybody see that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, nice and clear. Great. So again, thank you. So this is going to go for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll get our paints out and get dirty here in a little bit. So I want to sort of just share what I think in my head when I'm making a painting, what I consider is important to me in my construction of something that's interesting. I'm always thinking about this. I mean, it's a part of me now. I don't have to consciously think. It's like driving a car after 50 years. You just do it. And so these things are a part of me, but I think they're really important to what I try to do in constructing a painting. I do not want to reproduce a reference. I want to use a reference as a point of creativity, as a point of starting. And so I'm always conscious of, if I'm a slave to that reference, it's not what I want. I want to be using it as a start point and kind of go from there. I want to be in charge. I want to make decisions about the reference and what I think I want from it. And I want to design every one of them that I work with. So rarely do you see a second photograph based on my paintings with it. There's two lives to a painting. It's something that I've started realizing a number of years ago. And one is the painting that I'm doing in front of the reference. And anybody seeing it can compare it to the reference and say, hey, that tree shouldn't be there or whatever. And the other life of the painting is the rest of its life, hanging on somebody's wall. And they don't have the reference to compare it to. So that's what I'm working for. I'm working for that lifelong life of the painting that's going to be away from the source, and it's got to be interesting and attractive, and it should read a bit about what the reference is going to be from. And then it's how you paint it more than what I paint. And so trying to be creative and playful with color, playful with brush strokes, and all of that is really important to me. And I work pretty hard to try to make each of them kind of unique and different. So we're going to be constructing a composition. And that composition is going to be built primarily on shapes. They are the foundation of any painting or construct that we're going to work with. And then we're going to put the values into those shapes to try to get each of them individual. Some will come forward, some will go back, and so on. And then we're going to top it up with color to give it some zing and make it interesting to look at. I'm going to put almost no detail. That's the last thing in my painting. And that's the thing that I decide after the fact. That's usually what I decide the next day if I'm doing a plein air sketch or a fairly small painting here in the studio. I would go back at it the next day and see if the big things worked, then come back in and say, now, can I support them in any way? Excuse me, with some detail. So I'm going to just walk through a few things here. I'm going to be focusing on shape. Shape is the construct. Oops, what happened there? Shape is the construct of the painting. It's about that. And each of the shapes, needs to be independent, and they should tell you what it is. I mean, those shapes look like trees. If you don't think they're trees, it would surprise me a heck of a lot. So that's the identifier. It's the shape that we use to create the construct that we're working with. And then we put the value in those shapes. And the values create separation between the shapes. And when you're starting out, you think that this is pretty obvious. I don't need to talk about this, but that's what's going on. And you've got to realize that when you're constructing your painting or critiquing your painting. This shape is a different value from that shape. It's obvious, but that's important because that's how you construct your painting. And the values also create the foreground, midground, and background. Value makes this Lynn come forward. Value makes the eagle come forward. Value moves these guys behind it. And value has created those trees way in the distance. And you wouldn't think that those trees were anything but in the distance because they're simply flat, light values. So when we're constructing these things, we're always working with that. But these trees come forward visually because they are a darker value. They can be a different color. They could be even in yellows, as long as they're darker than what's behind it. And the ones in the distance are darker than what's behind that. And that's the construct that we're working with the whole time in our planning. Dark comes forward, light goes back with it. I work with the Munsell value scale as, oh, darn. I work with the Munsell value scale as most of us do. And with the Munsell scale, I organize it into 3 value families. So I take a grouping of light and put it into what I call a value family, and that's an average value of all of those ones in there. And that is the primary values that I'm working with in my painting. All my shapes get that primary value right off the top, and then I can compare them based on that flat value alone. It's just like a puzzle of different flat shapes. Really important to me to build this way. And then I can take the shapes that I'm working with, add those values if I want to do a black and white, or at least a value with the color in it, the first best guess of color in it. And that, I've got there, that's better. I'm going to try it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so now I have the flat shape with the color. So these are the primary values. That's the first thing that I put in to my shapes. Then we look at the variation within that family, the light family, and these are the secondary values. So they come in on top of that flat value that I was working with to start with. And the big issue is not letting a value from this group move into this group. To try to keep the value families distinct and your statements clear and strong. It's one of the hardest things to do in making a painting. And I suffered from difficulties with that for a long time before it really got clear in my head how much stronger it was if I could make these shapes independent, but still have variation inside of them. So it's basically taking what we had before with the primary value and sticking the secondary values inside there, and they have to live in that value shape as best they can. And that's a slow, steady process in building a painting that I really, really encourage. People, when I talk about linear perspective, half the people leave the room. Think it's about buildings and so on. Almost every strong painting is built on a foundation of linear perspective. And all it means is that everything gets smaller with distance. And it doesn't have to be like this guy where it's just a perfectly clear road, but things get smaller as they go further away. That's linear perspective. And it is an important tool for us to be able to exaggerate that, to make the trees in the foreground larger than they are in the reference, and to make the trees in the background smaller than they are in the reference, or the rocks, or whatever it is we're working with. So we tend to really push linear perspective, and all it means is things close to me get bigger, things further away get smaller, and that creates tremendous drama in the painting. Very important. It's a great tool to really emphasize. Then we, on top of that linear perspective, we come in and we add our aerial perspective, and that's based just on value and color, and that enhances the linear perspective to bring things forward through temperature and take things away through temperature. and through value as well. Darks close to us, lighter values in the distance. So they're basically there to enhance the linear perspective. And that's what makes the painting zing. That's what makes it strong and really makes it come at you or go off into the distances with it. So in aerial perspective, the values, the foreground tends to have the darkest and the lightest. So that's a foreground here of an old sketch. We got some of the lightest in here and we have the darkest in here. It's a great mix. As we move into the midground, we lose that emphasis on value variation. As we move into the background, it's gone. It's basically flat. Very little detail and very little distinction between the shapes that are back there. And you have to force that on your paintings. It doesn't. The references don't give you that in many cases. So you've got to force that to make things come close and make things go back. Excuse me. The other is color, and understanding that if we want things to come close to us, we have to encourage them through warmth and temperature and saturation. So the warmest and most saturated colors, if there are any in your painting, come into the foreground. As it goes back, they cool off, and as they go back, they're totally cooled into the violets and the blues. And the big catcher is the yellow. The yellow is the first one to disappear. And if you've moved yellow into the midground, you have to really neutralize it with its complement violet or getting into yellow ochre, that kind of thing. That's the one that tends to get visually confusing if you've got yellows back here that are too saturated. So we're working with values, darker as it comes closer, and we're working with color, warmer as it comes closer. We're working with value, lighter as it goes away, and we're working with temperatures and colors cooler as it goes away. That makes the painting read and makes it zing, but we've got to be able to enforce that on the reference because it doesn't work like that. You're not given that in many cases. The last thing that I have in my mind that I'm thinking about is John Carlson's theory of values and angles. And anyone that's a serious has a serious interest in landscape painting, I really encourage that everybody should own that book, John Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. It's 100 years old. It's a classic. I don't know any professional painters, especially instructors, that don't own that and encourage it. It's the foundation for many of the fancier books we have today. But the knowledge, the information is really so solid in his book. The pictures are in black and white, but if you go to Google, type in his name, you're going to get all the images in color. So it's I think it's $15 on Amazon. It's a great investment. But what he said, it is obvious, but like a lot of things, until somebody says them, you don't say, oh yeah, why didn't I think of that? The sky is the light source for most of our landscape paintings for most of the day. Not always, and not in storm conditions, so there are variations, but generally it is the lightest. Now you can have a dark cloud up here, and that is the focus where we'll say that's the lightest, that's the light source. And that light source is thrown down onto flat surfaces. In this case, Georgian Bay, but it could be a driveway, it could be a pasture, it could be anything that's flat. Then as things come up on an angle, it starts to get darker. And that can be seen back here. It can be the side of a foothill out in the mountains. It can be the side of a roof in a slope coming up. And then as they go vertical, it's the darkest. And that is so simplistic that a lot of people ignore it, but that's ignored at your peril. This is so important that if you haven't got this and you can't apply it effectively, you'll be missing opportunities in a lot of your paintings. And where this is applied often is in the critique, coming back after you've done it and you look at this thing and say, this would be stronger if I change the value on this. I do a lot of critiquing of others' paintings, and this is the most common thing that I'll sort of pull out of my toolkit and apply to a lot of the work that I'm looking at. It would be stronger if you made the background this, that, the next thing, based on that relationship that Carlson described. So that's really important, and it's really something that I thought it initially. I thought this is silly. It isn't. It's very important in constructing most of your landscapes. So I'm going to make a painting. When I make a painting, there's four things that I have in my mind. There's four things that play. I am going to look at my shapes and try to make them correct and interesting. Yeah, that's not a bad shape. Looks like a tree. That's okay. It lays. I'm going to look at the correct values, and I'm going to apply John Carlson's guide. It's going to say that the light source is in the sky. It's going to throw that light down on flat surfaces down below. And as things get more vertical, they get darker. And the things that are really vertical, the tree is the darkest of all. Then I'm going to look at linear perspective and make sure that I've got this effect and the fact that my tree closest to me is much bigger than the ones back there and bigger than the ones way back there. That's strong linear perspective with it. Then I'm going to look at aerial perspective, and I'm going to say, okay, is the warmest part of the painting close to me? Does that surface, that pasture, get cooler as it goes back? The trees, are they darker and the colors stronger and closer to me in the front here? And then do they gray and disappear in the background? So I have applied all of those things. So I'm always going through this all the time. Is that a question?
No.
Okay. And then I use this the same when I'm critiquing my work, whether it's in the field, at home, whether it's halfway through. It's just always looking at these four things and just asking the question, have I done this well? Have I delivered on what I would like to do to create this as an interesting piece? So that is foundational for me. I'm going to be working on a split primary palette. And that is probably the most common palette that most of us use. So it's a warm and cool of each of the three primaries. And it doesn't matter which yellows, as long as one is warmer and one is cooler, or which reds, one warmer and cooler and one blue. Then I add convenience colors and complements. So every one of these, so the burnt sienna is going to complement the blues. The viridian is going to complement the reds. The dioxazine purple is going to complement the yellows, and so on. Then I like a neutral gray, and I have some playful colors, a teal and a magenta, that are just fun, that I enjoy. And then black is going to be a part of everything I do. Not that I work with black on its own, but I use it to neutralize. I use it to take colors down, and I use it with yellows to make the strongest variation to greens. I use the greens a lot that are black and yellow with it. So that's the foundation. I work on a glass palette. It's 18 by 24 glass palette with gray, liquid Texas gray actually painted underneath it. I work from my fishing tackle box, and I really like this approach. This is something that I just started about 5 years ago. Almost everybody now that's in acrylics is using it. And it's really nice because you can, mix things up. I can add other colors to it. In the summer, I'll take golden open, about 20%, and mix it into these heavy body acrylics and try to keep it alive longer in the field with windy, warm days. So the box approach has been really effective for me.
Brian,
Almost everybody that's not, yeah.
why is your palette gray?
Why is my palette gray? Value 5 neutral. I'm always thinking about value, always thinking about value. So when I'm mixing something up, I can compare it to a value 5 on my palette. And so I take my paints from here and I mix them on here. And that's when I can look at it and make decisions about the value that I'm working with. Anything that I can do to encourage just an understanding of where I stand with one patch of color next to the other one. And it's temperature and value that I'm comparing.
Great, thank you.
A lot of people ask, don't your paints dry out with this? They don't at all. They get a little bit scuzzy around the edge after a week or 10 days and so on, but not bad. And what's nice is it has a lid. So I can open the lid, go in, grab my paint, stick it out here, mix it up, close the lid, bang. So it's not exposed, hardly at all. And that works really well for plein air. I heard kind of a joke about acrylics in plein air. There are ways that you can work with acrylics outside. Freezing temperatures are more of a challenge. but there's even tricks there. But in the summer with the heat, there's no problem if you are aware of the different strategies that you can use to keep the paint workable. Then, in addition to this, these are my foundation colors. Warm and cool, warm and cool, warm and cool, warm and cool. I also put out what I call play colors, just fun colors, and they're often grays. And Liquitex makes the grays that I like the most. These are a bunch of triards, but like a very opaque violet, opaque green, opaque magenta, and so on. I just like to play with those, and so I grab different colors all the time. And so people ask me about my palette. This is my palette plus, and I can't tell you what the other ones are going to be because it'll be a different bunch every day. And that's part of the fun for me for painting. I love the exploratory opportunities that come with variations in color. Okay, so we are going to Halifax. Going to Nova Scotia anyhow. This is the image we're going to work from. And this is in Blue Rocks, just outside of Lunenburg, in Nova Scotia. And I just fell in love with this place. I was down there for the Parsborough Plein Air competition, and we drove up along the waterfront looking for opportunities to paint, my wife and I. And this is where we ended up, and we parked here for almost a day. And this is just a wonderful, to me, generic waterfront. Wonderful rocks, greens, nice shapes. I really, really like it. If I walked up the hill and looked over the top, this is what I've got right behind that rock. Like, it's an amazing spot to go, and just find really neat things and paint to your heart's content there. So that's where we spent our morning, or better part of a day, and I spent the morning painting. So these are 3 11 by 14s that I did, and these are plein air sketches, right? These are quickies, about an hour, maybe an hour and 15 for the first and 45 minutes for the last. It gets faster as you go along, but it's based on this, and this is my first interpretation. Leave it alone. Look at it the next day. This is my second interpretation. Then my third one, I tend to get silly. I tend to want to play and do different. This is pretty traditional. Then I get into my silly stuff, and I like that, and I like to see the variation that I get, that I can create with these things. But each of these things has a problem, or most of them do. This guy has got the yellow too much up front, and that yellow against the dark, that grabs the eye, and I don't want the eye grabbed that close. So the next one, I quieten that down and move the yellow further with it. And then I still needed some zing spots, so I just did little spots of red back there. That's what Bob Gen got me doing. I call them Gen dots. Just little spots that are unique in the painting and kind of grab the eye. And then on the last one, I was concerned that this shape is smaller than that shape. And I didn't design it right. The one that's closest to me should be bigger than the one that's further away, right? Linear perspective. Exaggerate the things that are close to you and reduce the size of the things that are further away. So I want the emphasis of larger close, smaller as they step back. So I apply that all the time with this kind of stuff. Bigger shape down here and so on. The other thing I didn't like is this ends here and this rock ends there. And I want that kind of an effect. I want to reinforce the linear perspective as much as I can to take them to a zing spot, what I call a go-to spot. So I just take and manipulate the shapes that I have, and just make it so that I'm happy. So these 3 paintings all sold. Quickie, acrylic 11 by 14 on MDF board. Where did they sell? Not in Nova Scotia. 2 of them sold in Ontario, and 1 of them sold out in Vancouver Island. I did not put the title on it. I did not say, "Oh, sorry, this is Georgian Bay," or "I'm sorry, this is the East Coast of Vancouver Island." I just let them speak for themselves and put a different kind of title on it. And so I've taken something that had a boat and everything here, a specific location, and found this. And I thought this was really nice. Strong verticals, dark, the light back here. I could do fun things back there. That's why I chose that, and that's why I decided to play with it. So I do a lot, like I do a lot of West Coast paintings that I'll sell as Georgian Bay here. You can't tell the difference. It's just a reference with it, and it's kind of fun. So those are my pointing, and I'm going to take this guy, and I'm going to try to move it into a more traditional, almost call it a studio painting. And I've got that as a reference I can look at. And then I always construct, if I'm doing a studio painting, I look at them in black and white, and I take and put them into Art Rage, which is a fairly popular digital program. And I look at, I want this the darkest, I want this to be in the dark family, but not as dark, and so on and so on. Medium family light, and lighter back. And this is a light family here, and the light family on the water. Always thinking of the values and that kind of stuff. And then, do I want to be silly? These are the silly things that I do. They attract more than the traditional stuff does. So it's kind of fun, for me to do that sort of thing. So that, folks, is the plan. So we're in good shape. Are there any questions on that? That's fast, I know. Sorry.
Any questions so far, maybe?
No? Oh, come on. Push me. No questions? Okay, then we're going to swing over and get some paint in.
Brian, sorry,
Yeah.
just a quick one. Where you have put your pigments out for plein air, and it had a cap on it. Where did you get that one? Because I've looked for something that separates the paints and has a cap.
The fishing tackle box?
Again?
The box that my paint's in?
Yes, the box.
It's a fishing tackle box. I can get.
Oh gosh.
You've been looking in the wrong places, Louise.
I guess.
Oh, I thought I had a bunch here. There's a smaller one.
Oh.
And I
Oh
use
my
that
gosh.
for plein air. And sometimes I'll have two of them. And who makes a nice one? You can go to Home Depot and Husky. If you go in the area where they've got their bags for carrying stuff, Husky makes a different selection of these for holding screws and that.
I thank you so much. That I've been looking for something like that for so long.
And then Michael's has them as well.
Okay.
Or you can go. This is called Art Box. You can go to Amazon and just Google Art Box, or just type in Art Box. You get all the different shapes and sizes. And
Okay.
That's a good product line.
Okay. Thank you.
So this is all dried, right? This is my summer one from last year. So I've left it open. It's all dried. It's acrylic paint. I'm going to put that in a bucket of warm water, and these things will all peel out. Just peel out and make quite a clean thing. I just use them and use them and use them. I use them and abuse them. And they, so I've got this in my studio. I want to go plein air. I just pick it up, take it to my car. It's so convenient.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brian.
Anybody else? That's a question I always get. Okay, so we are going to hopefully swing over to my other camera. It's hopefully still on. Looking good. Okay. I just got to pop open some water here. And I'll straighten that out a bit. So I'm working on an MDF board, 12 by 16 with canvas. Cheap. I don't know if you can see colors under there. There's probably 3 demos underneath that surface. Yeah, that's about the best I can do. Is that okay, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. So I have done my thinking. I have worked through the process of deciding what I want to include and how I want to do it. And so I take First thing is a water soluble pencil. This is a Verdumber water soluble pencil from Faber-Castell. And that allows me to quite quickly just put my thinking in with it. You know, I can just go through and shape here, so on. Big one here until I got what I think is a reasonable composition. Then I take an acrylic marker, and the first thing that's important is the horizon line. So I make a commitment. That's where I want the horizon line. I want this shape, something like that. And the paint will do the final drawing. So I'm not worried whether this is totally correct or not. I want that kind of a feel there. And just try to make interesting variation, interesting shapes. I've got, and I want to have this feeling, right, of taking me to the go-to spot, which is going to be behind a tree up there. So I want my tree to come down here, this big tree over here. And it's just a tree-ish thing. It's just a tree-ish thing. It doesn't have to be the perfect tree or the same tree. And again, you know, this thing could represent Ontario. It could represent the West Coast. So there's all sorts of variation there to be played with. But I want that guy behind this guy. And that one has got to overlap the background. This foreground has got to overlap the rock, which has got to overlap the second rock, which has got to overlap the background hills back there. Overlap, overlap, overlap. Just says, I am close, you are behind. And it makes the perspective really stronger. I want some water down there. We want to close off this a little bit to keep the eye in. And I'll probably close off the top of the sky up there with it. So I got to look at that. And I want this kind of a feel, right? I don't want flat. I want that kind of a feel. I want a rolling rock surface. So I do all of that just to remind myself, once I get into the painting, I'll sometimes forget my plan and just get carried away. So I just look at it and play with it and make it interesting best I can. I know I want this to be dark out here, and the tree will get lighter as it moves in with it. Okay, that's my plan. Excuse me a sec. I'm just going to dry that. Oh, did I hit the camera? Oh, sorry. So then I can take and remove the water soluble pencil, clean the thing up, and see what my plan looks like. This is an approach where you're sneaking up on your painting with your plan. You're not making a commitment. You're not really committing it until you're actually getting your brushes out and making the paint. But being able to come in with something removable, changeable, like the water soluble pencil, can be really important for people, especially at the beginning, that are anxious about the plan and just sort of want to get that going. Okay, while that dries, get out some stuff here. We decided earlier on that it was better. There's not a lot to see in the color mixing that I'm going to be doing here. So we didn't set up the camera on the palette. I'll tell you what I'm working with as I do it. Let's have some fun. I'm going to try something different. So I'm going to moisten this. This is one of the hairdresser sprayers. Works really nice as a light spray. I'm going to grab. So this is a Legato brush, L-A-G-A-T-T-O, I think, from Opus. Really nice, firm. And I'm going to take it. I'm just going to put some underpainting on this guy. That's why I moistened it. I don't work with mediums. I work with water. Mediums are not necessary, and I find it just an additional encumbrance on me to have to get that right and so on. I just go fast. So that's okay. Then I can take and I can add to that, or I can remove it with a rubber shaper. I can develop a value plan if I want with a rubber shaper. Just play with different stuff. The outcome will be the outcome, and it may not be what I wanted at the beginning, but I just keep working with it until I'm happy. And my normal technique, my normal approach is that I paint fast and then I slow down at the end and spend a lot of time with them. It's often the next day. But my initial lay-in is fast, fast, crude, invented a little bit, I guess you'd call it. Well, I'm going to darken up. We know this is going to be the darkest part of the painting. Anything wrong with a red tree? I don't think so. And then this is going to be darker down here. The eye goes from dark to light. So each of these rocks are going to be lighter than the one in front of them. These are really nice brushes. This brush is probably 7 or 8 years old. Just stands the test of time. Just play, add a little bit to this one, and we'll leave that one as it is back there. So I'm starting to develop a value relationship. Didn't have to do this. I just thought, what the heck, just for fun. And I always darken the top of the sky to try to keep the viewer in the painting. And I'll end up making the water darker on this side so the viewer can't walk out. And that's where our punch will be in there. We'll make a zing back there in the distance. Okay. So always start with the darks first and start with transparents on those darks. So I have a sap green that I'm going to mix into this red. And I'm going to take the brush and hold it gently, and I'm going to drag. And there'll be some application and some missing. This is scumbling. You should still see some of the red underneath that. Just big bold brush strokes, and those absolutely no blending. I just apply one, apply the next one, change the shape, move it around, and so forth, and just start to slowly sneak up on the thing. I do not think about the final outcome. I do not think about what I want in the end. I let that develop. I am a painter that responds to what's already there. And so I feel very comfortable in just quickly banging in something and decide if I'm happy with it or not. So I'm playing with warm, darker in this foreground area. I'm going to stick some of that up in the tree too. That's not bad. That's a burnt sienna added into it. We'll let that dry. So I am now doing what I said before. I have my shapes. I'm putting in the primary values for those shapes, the primary values flat for those shapes. And we'll get the relationship between those shapes working before we go on with anything else. I'm going to take my burnt sienna and add a little bit of ultramarine blue, and that's going to produce a nice gray with some white. A little lighter than I wanted. I really like these big, strong brushes for the first lay-in. And then you come inside those with interesting strokes. But I just want to make something, and I'm not worried about the colors in my reference. I'm not trying to copy that at all. If they end up like that, that's fine. Questions? I'm quite comfortable painting and answering questions, so don't worry about protecting me. Okay, and so we're going to move into a cooler. We're going to add more blue to this same mixture as we go to the one back there, and that's way too dark and way too blue. Try it, see what you think. If you don't like it, you change it. No, too dark.
Brian, I'm wondering if when you're mixing your color on your palette, if that palette is somehow on the same table as your camera or on the same structure, because your the demo is shaking a lot when you're mixing your paint.
Oh no, that's me hitting it.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you for that. I will try to be more aware. So now I'm moving into something that's a little lighter and a little cooler as it goes back there. This is first layer, right? This is first layer. And I'm going to now come back and do the distant hill. Hill's back there, too dark. Blue, so this is a primary blue with a little bit of burnt sienna. And it's going to move into a greeny look. But it's the value I want. And I can do anything here because it's going to be shaped by what's up top. It's going to be shaped by the sky. So I'm not worried about making a mess. I'm a negative painter. And that allows me to shape things by what's behind it.
And you're not using anything mixed in with your paints at all?
No, I'm not. Is that a problem?
No, there was a question if you were using a retarder in your paints.
No, I do not. So I am not a medium painter. Some painters are. David Langefield, biggest example. But it's not necessary to use mediums anymore. Golden has put a really nice thing on their website where they say it's not necessary to use mediums to make the paint adhere to it at all. Well, I stopped a number of years ago, and I'm much happier without it. It just takes so much time to fool around and get the ones right. Only one I would work with is a gloss glazing medium. A gloss glazing medium has a small amount of retarder, and if I was doing an acrylic portrait and I wanted to have smooth edges, or I wanted to play with my edges, if I was making really fluffy clouds, or this is what I would squirt into my paint as well when I'm working outside with it. So that's the only one that I use, and that's a great product.
Who makes that one?
Yep.
Golden. Okay.
Golden. Yeah. Everybody makes one. It's got to say glazing. If it says glazing, everybody's on the same wavelength. If it says glazing, it has the medium in it. Okay, so sky. So the sky will be built up slowly. I've got to make sure that my reflection down here. So I am very much someone who develops the painting, right? And I respond to what I've already done. I either get rid of it or I build on it. I normally paint very fast normally go to what I would call the about the 80% point, maybe a little more, and put it away. Come back at it the next day and make the final details with it. So I like to go really fast, and then I slow down, really slow down at the end, and try to just give it an opportunity to sort of tell me what it would like me to do. And I am inventive. I play as long as I got my construct right. I've got my linear perspective in. I've got fairly good grasp of the aerial perspective. Then I just play. Try to make each one unique and different. Well, that's first layer up above. Let that dry. Bit of a sky hole over here. Well, the water is going to be a little dark. The light source is the sky. The water is going to be a little darker, but in the same family of colors, and it'll have to develop. I'll start with it and see what happens. A little more drama in the sky. Like drama. How's the ice cream?
It was delicious, I can tell you that.
So Brian, do you varnish your work afterwards?
So that's a good question. What is varnish? What do you mean by varnish?
I'm just reading a question. So Nancy.
Okay. So the answer is depends what you're talking about. Because the traditional varnishes that you use almost for sure in oil, we don't use in acrylic anymore. It's not necessary to use varnish. And why I'm almost sounding silly with this is that there are products that are called varnish that Triart makes, that Liquitex makes, that are just acrylic polymer. They are not the old-fashioned varnish. And that's what I use. It's called an isolation coat. An isolation coat is the polymer. Gee, that color looks terrible on my computer. I'm going to get rid of my reference and move up closer there. So the isolation coat I use is every company makes something like this, but Triart and Liquitex call it a varnish. And when you look at the ingredients, it's just acrylic polymer. It is just acrylic paint without pigment. So it's the same stuff with it. It is not necessary to have one of the old acrylics are not sensitive to light like oil is, and the protection that you get with the isolation coat is excellent. And then you can come back and repaint. Like I'll be bringing paintings home from galleries that didn't sell, and I'll repaint them just over top of that isolation coat.
Is that a gloss finish?
It's a gloss finish. The finish is determined by how thick you paint it on or how many coats that you use. So I use one coat and I do not put a lot on. So it's a semi-gloss for me. Some people like it glossy, and you can do that with it, put an extra coat on, or just put it on heavier. But that's not what I want. So still sticking with the same brush, starting to work inside some of the shapes now, and putting in what I would call the secondary values.
I have to ask
What have
one
I got?
question.
Am I lined up here? That's not bad. Am I lined up there? That's not bad. Now I got to get inside these things and try to make this interesting.
Go ahead.
I,
Sorry,
got
I wanted to ask one more question about the isolation coat. Is there,
Yeah.
do you have to use an isolation coat? Is there a big advantage to it, or?
Yeah, you should, because that's what protects your painting. That's what takes Grandpa's cigar smoke off of it, or prevents it from wrecking it, just like a varnish would. And that also probably pins down your painting for guys like me that don't use mediums, which everybody thought you had to do a while ago. Now we know you don't, but this ensures that you're securing, you're sealing the outer layer of the painting.
Thanks.
I will, and I do it almost right away. As soon as the thing is dry, I put on my isolation coat. I would never send a paint. Sorry, yeah.
Sorry, we have a question about scale. So when you're working on a larger canvas, you use a larger brush. Is that right?
Yeah, like this is a pretty big brush. I mean, this is an 1.5-inch brush. And it just like I like this because I can bang in with this thing. I have no fear working with this brush because I can take it and I can do, we can come in here with it. We can do all sorts of little things, and I can just, especially in plein air, I can just manage this thing to dance in different directions, and it works out fine for me with it. So it is a brush that I like. I have larger brushes, and if it's a big painting, then I would move into this sort of thing. This is from Princeton. That's a great big guy. That cost $70. I can't believe I bought that. But it's a great brush for doing what I'm doing here, right? I'm working on first layer here now. Oh, let's have some fun. Let's play with this. Problem is, I can't fit it in my fishing tackle box. I'm a very angular painter, angular brush. Going to something big like this, it just prevents you from being too picky. And I really like and encourage that. And just putting in you're mark making basically.
And do you usually use a flat brush?
I usually use a flat. I rarely use a give me the other one.
Round?
Yeah, well, I almost never use a round. I'm experimenting. I'm spending this winter trying new things, and I'm taking a workshop with a Nova Scotia painter, Eric Jacobson. I don't know if you know Eric's work. That he's pushing me to try different things, and so I'm trying different brushes and just different ideas and try to just goof around. So we'll let that build. So I'm just moving into, that's black that I put onto that. I'm going to take a little, I can't get this brush in the jars. But there's nothing that says I can't take and make a big brush sort of dance.
Have you tried a filbert?
Yeah, I use them a bit, but it's basically a flat. I don't use brights hardly at all. Basically a flat that I work with.
Do you mix your own black or do you use pure black?
I do both. I do both. For this, because it's acrylic, it just to mix it up and have it stay. I could mix it up and put it in the fishing tackle boxes, but I'm using this ivory black here now, and I don't use much of it, but I use it to neutralize or to create accents like that a little bit with it. Oh, what did I do with my other brush? There we go. Well, let's come back up to the sky and see if we can zing that up there. Well, I'm going to grab some Indian yellow. Very strong. I probably should, yeah, I'm going to get a clean brush. So this is now the same brush, long flat, a legato, and it's a 1-incher. Lay it down hard edge and then bring it up to a soft edge. Lay it down hard edge and then bring it up. Okay, so I can see that going somewhere as a grabber. And if it's going up there as a grabber, you better take it and bring it down here a bit. And I'll just goof around in the water till I sort of have a feel of something that might be interesting with it. It's too yellow. I'm going to take some magenta. Boy, the camera sure is distorting that. But now I'm just fooling around. I'm just asking myself, okay, so what would make this interesting? What would make this fun? What would make it attractive? Magenta is one of my go-to fun kind of colors that I like to work with. Okay, I gotta get away from it for a few minutes. How are we doing? 8 o'clock.
Okay, Brian, since you're taking a temporary break from painting, did you not right at the very beginning talk to us about yellow in terms of your discussion of color and suggest that yellow
Yep.
should be at the front of your painting
Yep.
and foreground?
Oh, you got me.
Yeah.
Oh man, go back to your ice cream. Yeah, but the sky breaks all the rules. I didn't say that, did I?
No,
the
you
sky,
didn't.
the sky for me is for adventure and fun. And I mean, we all break the rules, but generally in a landscape painting, the further away you go, the cooler the yellow has to be. It can be there for sure, but it should be cooler as it goes back. And give me a break. I'm not finished yet.
It was just a question, not a critique.
And it just marks, just marks. And I'll often just take and just play with different things on something like this, and I'll open it up with sky holes. As long as this is the darkest part of the painting, I can live with it. I can play and be inventive. That's got to be the darkest part of the painting. It's vertical. That's John Carlson at work. Okay, so take some of that, the brown. You can grab a few hairs at the end of the brush and do very fine line work with these bigger brushes. Play with a variety of different things. And I want more light and dark variation in these things now. This is going to be pretty impressionistic here when we're done. It's funny, a lot of the stuff I do today, I would consider wild compared to what I did even a few years ago. But there's more commercial interest in the wild ones than when I thought I was painting well before. So it's a win-win for me because this is a lot more fun than being correct.
That's interesting. The market has changed, right? And
Well, the market's different. People always gravitate to Van Gogh. He's hardly a you think where the popular is, and so many of them, right from our group of seven. Look at how inventive the group of seven were back then, 100 years ago. Like, no photographs. Really, really interesting.
mhm.
Really interesting what people want, what they like. I can never figure it out. Half the ones I sell I don't like, and half the ones that don't sell I really like.
Hmm.
I think everybody would tell you that. It drives you nuts. Doesn't matter a toot as long as you're having a good time.
Just have fun. That's right.
That's really important. Really important, especially if you're trying to learn that you're freeing yourself up from correctness as much as you can, where you can, to try to just relax. If you relax, you'll do a lot better. And it's acrylic, right? I can just take it. I can take and do things with it and change it.
Can you give us your thoughts on reflections?
Yeah. So here, I mean, there's not a lot. There's just a little bit I'm putting down. I'm just, fooling around with color with it. But the source of the reflection has got to be different than the reflection itself. That's the primary thing that you got to remember. the source of the reflection. If it's a dark source of a tree or whatever, then the reflection is lighter than that dark source. If it's a light source, then the reflection is lighter. Is darker than it. So it's opposite to what the reference is. And it makes a huge difference once you start to understand that and buy into it. Huge difference.
Brian, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So if we had a tree here that was reflecting in, the reference or the reflection of that tree would be a different value than the tree itself. If it's a light tree, like a nice yellow, red autumn tree, then the value would be darker probably in the water, and the colors would be muted compared to the saturation in the tree. If it's a dark tree, like a really strong evergreen, then it would be the opposite. If it's a strong dark tree, it would be a light reference or a light reflection. Same color, but lighter. With always water lines going through it. That's really important. A lot of people put reflections down and don't make it really clear that this is water. Well, even if your reference is still water, and you can't see, any water lines in it, don't do that. It's got to say, "I am water." So I've gone really almost silly playful with the colors here. So I'm just playing, try to see what I would like. Too straight a line on these rocks. That's better. So I just keep doing it and doing it and doing it until I get, closer to where I want to be, and then I'll stop and make decisions about whether or not, I'm going in the right direction. And most of the time, I would quit at a point where I think I'm okay, but I'm not sure, and so I've got to come back the next day, let it dry, because it is different when it dries. I don't know if you acrylic painters see that, but we know it dries darker, but it dries flatter too. The paint, the surface layers tend to go in and absorb what's underneath it, and it can be really dramatic, the change that you get. Questions?
I think we're caught up.
When you started with your MDF board, how smooth was it? You gesso it and then
Yeah.
sand
So,
it?
so this is the used one. It's got a number of paintings underneath it.
Yeah.
Right, but it wouldn't matter if it was a new one or an old one. It's the same thing. If it's
Do you
a new
sand
one,
it?
no, I don't sand at all. I don't like sanding. I sure don't want to get the oh, what is in MDF?
Oh, the resins and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not very happy. It's not a very happy thing to absorb.
Yeah.
So sanding is out for me. And I don't need to. I don't want a flat surface.
Hmm.
Maybe some of you have painted with Marc Grambois, great painter and friend, but he likes his surfaces flat. He sands the heck out of them, not me. I want them rough, and so when I put my gesso on, I use it with a roller that's got some tooth to it, so it's always going to have a bit of a zing. I want to have just variety, little fun stuff in it as much as I can. And so, geez, I'm not answering your question. I almost forgot.
No,
what it was.
no, I just thought it looked very smooth when you first started with the
No,
underpainting.
actually, it's actually not. There's lumps and bumps of old paintings underneath it, and I like that.
Yeah.
I'll there. That's a nice bite. I like that.
Hmm.
I like to have that effect of something underneath it,
Yeah.
and to try to make it interesting. I don't know, just interesting. Variation, variation, variety, variety, variety. So this is too dark. That's about right. That's got to be darker if this is going to stay like that. And that's what I decide the next day. I just go around and ask myself those questions.
You're working with just putting some light color there, and I am guessing that you're just using a light yellow. Just want to make sure that you're not using white, or to ask about
No, I rarely use white. This is actually one of my favorites, called a light pink. Light pink. It's a really nice sky color for me. Um, and I also I'll put some green gold up there. I also like green gold in the sky. Wonderful color.
So that yellow color is called light pink.
That's called light pink from Liquitex. And I mean, I could get the same thing from other companies or something like it. So I'm just fooling around now. What would make this thing more interesting? Have I got the right lights? Have I got this, that? I'm going to take the water back into there a bit. Now I'm going to take some and I'm going to do some what I call tickling. It's basically scumbling. So my brush is fairly dry. I'm holding it really lightly. I'm putting it on the edge and just dragging it down. I don't know if you can see the hit and miss effect that I get with that over top of what's underneath there, but that can be very effective.
What was the name of that green that you're using that you like?
It's gold green, green gold. Everybody makes it. It's a must be on your palette color, as far as I'm concerned. It makes. I mean, look at the color of those greens. That is just gorgeous.
Do you just wipe your brush off, Brian, between colors?
Yeah, the odd time I'll stick it in the water, but I don't make a big deal of it. So now my brush is split. See that? I like it when that happens. Look at the interesting shapes I get from that. Just little sort of organic. Let's put some of that on the rock too. Now I'm being silly. No, I'm being silly a long time ago. Work there. So this is a teal color. and I quite like it. And it is very lively.
That's one of your fun colors?
One of my fun colors. I just keep trying stuff and see if I like it. And if I don't, I change it. So that drives a lot of people nuts that are trying to follow me. Anybody take a class with Brian Adio?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. He was like that. I told him I'm going to need a psychiatrist to figure out what the hell you're doing here when I get home. Because he didn't follow a reference at all. I'm really sad to see him pass.
Hmm. Yeah, very sad. I think we lost him December 28th this year.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know.
Nice man, good artist, great teacher.
I have one of his original watercolors.
I have two of his acrylics.
Wow.
Well, I have one of each.
Yeah. He was unique. He was a gem.
Yeah.
Count your blessings and your treasures. Those paintings are going to just mean every time you walk by them, you'll think of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's just passed then in the end of December.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I tried to track him down up in Killarney, but never had any success. He was never there when I wanted him to be. But I'm making a change here. I'm going in to add some alizarin crimson to the tree to bring it forward.
So, Brian, we have a question. How do you critique your own work?
How do I critique my own work?
Mhm.
Kind of like that slide that I showed you guys, where I think about first of all, like I used to have, like I take critiquing very seriously, my own and others as well. And I used to have a list that I would change every few years of things that I need to look at in my paintings. So I used to sit in the living room and put my paintings up in front of me, and every one of them, I would look at them and go through this checklist to see, are the values right? Is it a strong dominant value? A whole bunch of things I would do. So I really, really was my wife would say anal about my organization for that kind of thing. Hugely important that you do that well, that you're critiquing. Now it's more intuitive. I have I basically take a quick look and say, don't like that. Don't like that. And so, that's a lousy answer. Sorry. It is hugely, it's very personal. Like the stuff I like now, I would have hated a few years ago. So I totally changed who I want to be. And that's a reflection of me going and spending time with Jacobson. He's a wild and crazy painter if you don't know him. Wild and crazy. I'm getting old, and you want to try some last things while you can.
Oh no! Don't start the bucket list painting story.
That's about it.
Oh dear. Well, you're evolving. You're an artist. You get to evolve.
I've not done a studio painting since my wife died a year ago. So I'm trying to play. I'm trying to figure out who I want to be when I grow up. And little dots, little Gen dots. Everybody knows Bob Gen, I hope. Anyhow, yeah.
Brian, I had the great fortune of going heli painting with him in the buggy booze.
Oh, lucky you. I was at his last workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a bit of a mentor to me, and yeah, I'll always remember and appreciate him and his daughter as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that the bug was Slob there as well?
This was, oh my gosh, this was a good decade ago.
Yeah, I would think. Yeah, it's a number of years since he's passed.
Yes. Yep.
He did the last main workshop out on Cortez Island, and just had a wonderful time. And he was trying to die at that point, but he'd be out there at 10 o'clock at night reviewing your work.
Yeah.
Like he was such a devoted teacher.
Yeah. And one of his paintings, we were doing a plein air up there. I'm sure I got hypothermia that day. But he did a little red dot. And I had
little red dots, Gen dots.
I had a red jacket on and it became my painting.
Yeah. Yeah, Gen dots.
Yeah.
All right. So you've stopped working. So anyone that would like to ask a question can unmute themselves and maybe speak with you directly if they have last minute.
Have at it.
We have about 7 minutes or so.
Well, I wanted to read Nancy's question, which is if you were critiquing this piece, what would you say? Because now I'm curious about whether you would do the intuitive approach and say, or what you would say using your intuitive approach. So
you know what I would do?
This one?
Let's do it. I'll let this dry. Let's even break this guy down. Let's make a number of shapes inside that guy. So it's usually to do with shape and value, and just constantly, I want the foreground to be darker, rock, than the one behind it, and it's not. I want the one behind it to be lighter now, and it's not. And it's going to be worse when it dries tomorrow. It's all a part of the game. This is a part of the process for me, at least, for painting. And what I would do as well, I would probably reinforce overlap. I would take some of this tree here, bring a limb down there to overlap the rock, to make the rock clearly behind the tree. Make that clearer. So I do this. This is what I do when I bring paintings home from the gallery that hasn't sold. I'll take them and look at them like that and redraw them, rethink them. It's usually the shapes that are not right, not strong, not building the perspective that I want, that kind of thing with it. You can't see the light reflects. The light's reflecting at that top right corner of the dark, and so you've lost the effect. It looks gray, but it's very, very red, alizarin crimson red.
We just have a couple of minutes left, and I've used up all of my time. There are a couple of questions in the chat box there. One of them, someone's asked whether you always print your reference photo or do you use a laptop? And
if I'm working in my studio, I have a desktop that I have a desktop that swings over to a monitor beside my work area. And that's what I paint from, that monitor that's over there, coming from my desk where I'm sitting talking to you as well. So I'm I've just relocated here a few months ago. I was out of Vancouver Island. I had a 1,000 square foot studio out there. Here I am working in an 8 by 10 bedroom. So it's a different life here. It's okay. It's, it's working. I'm almost doing more teaching than painting now.
You enjoy teaching, right?
Yeah, I love teaching.
Yeah, it's obvious. And and you're having more fun with your paint. Your fun colors are more fun than ever.
So this is crazy what I did tonight. These darn demos, you can't stop and think. You just got to keep going. And, oh, it's almost 8 o'clock. Gotta go. And so I just do intuitive things on it that I just, oh man, I look at these after and think, good Lord. So what the other thing I would do with this, I would probably glaze this. Whoever was at Bob Ginn's workshop, he's the great glazer. I would probably take phthalo blue and glaze the whole thing down. Drop it down, cool it, and then come inside it again with some opaque colors to make a change. So I would make a sweeping pan change to the whole thing with a glaze, with a transparent. That I do about half the time. And he used to use a lot of black for that, a lot of ivory black.
Yeah, we also get to use Prussian blue as well as this blue phthalo.
Yeah, it's a beautiful color. Yeah.
If you go in and make changes that you're happy with, will you send those to us? Will you send us a picture of your final painting? Only
that time in this thing.
That's up to you.
I'll see. I got a full week ahead here, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, we had another question Nancy had. Do you ever draw with chalk?
No. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do on black canvas. Sometimes I do about a third of my paintings on black canvas, black gesso. And I'll use chalk. I used to use chalk. Now I just use the white water soluble pencil. I really like the water soluble pencils. They're removable. They're nice and controllable. The chalk's a little big and rough, and I don't enjoy it as much. It makes a mess.
I'm going to, it's 8:30 and everybody knows that I start and I end on time.
Yeah.
You do. All right.
Didn't you like your ice cream? Like what's
He did enjoy it. Brian, thank you so much. It's been such a treat. And we've had a wonderful time. Beautiful painting. You did have fun, and we enjoyed watching every minute of it. So thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. Yeah. Happy painting, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
There's my